Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington, and I am joined today by a very longtime friend, Ray Van Winkle of Reverend Ray Van Winkle and Associates. And I want to thank you so much for coming by, and why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you guys do?
Yeah, well, thank you much, Reed. Again, Reverend Ray Van Winkle and Associates. We are freelance wedding officiants. We've been in business since 2003, have performed a little over 1,500 weddings in the past 15 years. We serve the greater Puget Sound region, performing secular ceremonies, religious ceremonies, serious, lighthearted, whatever you want.
And I don't know if this is a surprise to you or not, but you actually performed the ceremony at the first wedding that I ever shot.
Really?
And it was Andrew and Bridget at Pickering Barn back in 2014.
Oh,
I just pulled it up this morning to make sure I had the date, because I remember them and the venue and you.
Yep.
But it was, I think, July 22nd.
It was a really hot day.
Yeah,
we were out in the lawn area in the back, no shade, very sunny.
Yeah, but it's funny just to think I didn't know what I was doing at all at the time, but I remember.
Yeah, I can tell. I remember you were tripping over your equipment and everything. It was terrible.
So and that's why I say when it's been a long time friend, it really has, in terms of like people that I recognize in the wedding industry. Right. You are certainly one of the longest that I remember. So you guys really are, you and maybe just a handful of others in the Seattle area are, I think, the longest tenured and most kind of well known. I mean, how is that? How have you built that over the years, and how has that been? I mean, I think you guys are like one of the top.
Yeah, well, part of it is just longevity, just slogging away at the business and the reputation and everything. And there have been other officiants who have retired over the years. A lot of it, I think, has to do with various and sundry industry awards. We've been King 5 Evening Magazine Best of Western Washington for about the past 10 years. Always a finalist with Seattle Bride's Best of awards programs. There is being established with a lot of venues and wedding planners. We are currently on the recommended vendor list for about, I think, 25 to 30 of the more popular venues here in the region, as well as working a lot with some very big heavy hitters in the wedding planning and coordination industry.
Is that something that you had? I mean, obviously, when you started a business, you wanted to be successful, but did you guys ever really kind of think, I mean, did you ever think long term, like, that you would be one of, like, kind of?
Not really. I just wanted to do something that I loved, to the point to where, much to my wife's chagrin, I used to tell people that I would do this for free, and I would. I love being a wedding officiant. It does pay the rent and the bills and everything, though. But no, never had a quote unquote business plan or a goal that we aimed towards, except just performing as many weddings as we possibly could.
So what was it about weddings in general that kind of drew you to that in the first place?
Well, I've been in other incarnations in the wedding industry for a long time. Back in the late 80s down in San Francisco, my wife and I owned a small catering company. So we did wedding receptions as part of that. My wife is a retired floral designer, and I worked with her as a floral assistant, and she taught me how to make bouquets and boutonnieres and whatnot, which came in handy, because typically when I get to the ceremony, the florist has delivered all the flowers, they take off, and there's people standing around holding a boutonniere in one hand and pins in the other, saying, what do I do? And I invariably end up pinning all the guys and sometimes the ladies.
That's a fantastic point.
corsages.
That's a great point. I'm sure that comes in very handy. I've learned the taco technique or whatever.
Yes,
I've done the
yes.
YouTube videos. So you guys have done a lot of weddings. When you filled out my questionnaire, it said, it was very specific. It said 1,347 that you had done.
I've done personally, yes.
That is an astronomical number. I'm sure that's gone up now, even since you filled this out a couple weeks ago. Does it ever get old? Is it still exciting? Talk about that.
It is still exciting. I wouldn't say it gets old because I'm very conscientious about approaching every wedding and every wedding rehearsal as if it were brand new to me, because it's brand new to the bride and groom and the wedding party, the parents, the kids. So you make that little mental adjustment, and that keeps things fresh.
Yeah, and I have noticed that we were talking off air when you got here. We had just worked a wedding together over Memorial Day weekend, and it really struck me. And I had emailed you afterward about how personal. And I know you knew them, I think, through work or
yes, I knew Stephania, the bride. I knew her. Yeah.
But it still, it just struck me that it felt like, although you were, a professional and hired to do it, but I mean, it felt like you were their friend, that you were somebody that the way the ceremony was constructed. Is that intentional? Talk about that.
That's just my style. Everybody is treated by me as if they were a dear friend, whether I've just met them the day before or it's a family wedding where I've known them for years.
Talk about do couples, what is their reaction to that, to the ceremony and to kind of after you do everything? I mean, what is their feedback, I guess?
Yeah, well, to be perfectly honest, at least directly right after the ceremony, most couples, brides and grooms both, have reported to me when we're done and we're signing the documents, they don't remember a thing I said. They remember the feeling and how it felt and how comfortable they were up there and appreciative that they were being directed during the ceremony by a professional officiant. The further reactions usually don't come until after, a while after the ceremony. You get back from honeymoon, I get a very nice card or an email, or other people who were guests at the wedding or getting married, and they contact me because they saw what a wonderful job we did. And I say we because I've got 3 associates and all trained in what I call my style of officiating. Do
you have to have any sort of training? What kinds of, talk about that you guys had, any sort of professional things like that?
Yeah, there are some organizations, I am told, that do seminars and training for officiants. I think they're mainly back east. Of the probably 40 to 50 professional officiants here in the Puget Sound area, I think there are probably only a couple who have actually gotten formal training. It's basically OJT, on the job training. Learning how to write a ceremony was probably the thing I had to work at the most. I have stage experience. I was a stage actor down in California growing up, and so I'm very comfortable in front of people and speaking and have those techniques. We were just talking about that ceremony we just did together the other day, and we were on top of the roof at Bell Tower, and the microphone crapped out. And so it's, okay, you're on stage, 3,000 seat theater. They don't give you a microphone. You take a deep breath, support your voice, and project. And that's what I did.
Talk about that. Talk about your stage background. That's fascinating, down in California.
Yeah, I was bit by the acting bug when I was in high school. We all know our high school cliques, the nerds, the jocks, the politicians. I was one of the theater geeks. and took drama all 4 years in high school. Did a couple of the high school plays, but by the time I was 17, I was auditioning at and working at community theaters in the Bay Area, and did a lot of performing, stage managing, costume work, lighting, sets. About the only thing I've never done in the theater is actually direct a play. I've actually even written some stuff before. And so I was doing that up until about age 30, and then it just, a lot of my friends in the theater biz, they do it all their life. For me, it fulfilled its purpose. Acceptance, responsibility, things that I wasn't getting at home and at school were provided in the theater.
So then you had said that you and your wife ran a catering company. So when you met her, were you still acting?
That's how we met, was performing. I was the master of ceremonies in a vaudeville-style musical review. And my wife, Stephanie, was one of the lead singers. It was kind of a Wild West vaudeville review, actually. She squeezed into a green velvet plunging neckline dress and sat on an upright piano and sang Hard-Hearted Hannah, the Vamp of Savannah. And my job was to go on stage, introduce acts, get acts off the stage, tell bad jokes, keep things rolling, and she was one of the acts.
And that was what did it for you?
Yep, that was the summer of 1976. I had just graduated from high school, and met her in we were rehearsing in an elementary school, and met her during a cigarette break. It's back when everybody smoked, even when you were a singer. Met her during a break. She was complaining about her boyfriend. And that was in 76, and we were good friends for a couple of, 5 or 6 years, actually, and things got serious in 80, and we married in 81.
Talk about your wedding and talk about who did the ceremony. How did that work?
We were married in the Catholic Church. My wife is Catholic. I'm not, which means we didn't get to have a nuptial mass, or as I tell people, I avoided having to eat the Jesus cookie. We did get married in a little chapel next to the church by a priest. It was about a 15, 20-minute ceremony, kind of like what we do here. Very low pressure, though. The priest was actually a personal friend of ours. We knew this fellow for a long time, little short Irish priest, Father Joe. And so it was a very comfortable thing. I was in the military at the time. I was in the Coast Guard, and my whole input to my wedding was, where's it going to be? When's it going to be? What do you want me to wear? I'll be there. Ironic, considering the business I'm in now. I married the youngest of 3 daughters, though, so my wife was not really into all the wedding planning and stuff. So my mother-in-law went to the Rolodex. Everybody remembers what a Rolodex is, don't they? Good. Flipped out the Rolodex and went the church, the reception hall, the food, the band, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Being married now, do you feel like that gives you, I'm always fascinated. I think I became a better wedding vendor having been married and kind of gone through, not that you can't the other way, but having, gone through the process and, obviously being married and in love, does that kind of help inform how you approach the day, or what's your thoughts on that?
I think so. Not so much how I approach the day, more so though, that one of the things that we offer but don't require is premarital counseling. I do that myself. My associates don't, just me. And I'm finding more and more that while I use a formal system for premarital counseling, it's called Prepare Enrich, that a lot of what I'm talking to people about is just based on 37 years of me being married.
Talk about that premarital counseling.
Yeah. I use the Prepare Enrich system, It's about a 250 question survey. It used to be done on paper and mailed in, but now it's on the internet like everything is. It's not counseling like, gee, Ray, we've got a problem, we need you to fix it. It's more getting all the issues out on the table before you get married, so there's no surprises. We talk about family backgrounds, children, money, sex, politics, religion, everything under the sun. I equate it, probably kind of crudely, but I equate it to when you buy a used car, you want to take that car to your mechanic and have them check under the hood and make sure everything's copacetic. So I'm the mechanic, your marriage is the car, and again, we're just looking at, are there any issues that you guys are in conflict about?
I think that's fascinating. I just had Tori Wall on last week on the podcast, and she has a psychology degree, and she's a wedding planner, and she was talking about similar being able to just kind of read people a little bit better when it comes to planning and kind of seeing people's motivations. How often do you guys do the premarital? Is that like a 1 in 10 couple thing? Is that a 1 in 50?
Oh, I would probably say it's about a 1 in 25. I do roughly 100 weddings a year, and probably 4 couples want to do the premarital counseling.
Is that successful? Obviously, I mean, what is their reaction to it?
It's for the most part, and I warn my couples about this. For the most part, you're going to discover things that you already know, but it's formalized and codified. And yes, we knew we were going to have these answers. Occasionally, every once in a while, there'll be something kind of a surprise. Oh my God, I didn't know you felt this way about this subject. And then we kind of dig into it a little further and discuss. And that's where a lot of my experience being an old married guy comes in, because seen it all. It's like the Allstate commercials, I've seen it, I've done it.
No, that's a great point. And I mean, that's a great, just to know, is kind
farmers, not Allstate. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, farmers.
Been there, done that, like the car in the tree or whatever. Do you, I think that's a nice bonus, I guess, for people to have, right, where they don't feel like they're obligated, that they have to sign up for that, but that's like an extra thing.
Exactly.
So going back to, so now you're married, you're in California still. So then you guys started a catering company.
Yep.
So talk about that and kind of getting into the wedding industry even back then.
that was an idea that my wife had. She's very much an entrepreneur, as it were. And we had worked as catering assistants for other catering companies, just as kind of a side thing. What do they call it these days? The side hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she decided that she wanted to have her own company. It was very small. It was basically the two of us, and we'd hire on a couple of assistants when we needed it. We didn't have a commercial kitchen. Back in those days in California, you didn't have to have a commercial kitchen to be a caterer, as long as you did all your food prep and cooking on site, which is what we did. We were small, we were mobile. That lasted, I think, just a couple of years. It's catering is a young person's, especially when you're doing the on-site stuff. It's a young person's job. You're hauling heavy stuff and food and ice and.
So you guys did that for a couple years.
Yep.
And then did that lead into the floral, or was that?
Nope. Floral was totally unrelated to that. My wife had been working an office manager, as I recall, for a baby clothes manufacturing company here in town. And she left that work and wanted, again, in the entrepreneurial spirit, to open up, or at least become a florist. They're no longer open, but at the time there was a company in Pioneer Square that did very intensive, like I think 3 or 4 month courses on floral design in the floral business. And she took those and originally was going to just go out and try to get a job in a florist, was unable to. Nobody wanted to hire a brand new, inexperienced florist. So she said, well, we're just going to open up our own shop. And her first shop was in Firdale Village in Edmonds. And she was there for a number of years and then moved over to Country Village in Bothell.
So that was up here. Up in this.
Yep.
So what brought you to Washington then?
The Coast Guard.
Okay.
Military. My last duty station was here in Seattle, and we just stayed.
So you guys are up here now. She's doing the floral thing. Mm-hmm. How did then the idea of becoming an officiant come about?
That, again, God bless her, was my wife. Her, everything I do is because of her. She had a notion that we were going to buy some property out on the coast. I think we had recently maybe been out there on vacation or something, but we were going to buy some property out on the coast and make it into a wedding venue. And I was going to be the in-house wedding officiant. The real estate portion fell through, but I had by that time gotten myself ordained online, Universal Life Church. Nothing wrong with that. Most officiants around here are online ordained. Got myself ordained, and I remember specifically a Saturday afternoon where I was watching Steph's shop for her. I was at the front register. She was in one of the other rooms doing a floral consult for a bride. The bride and the bride's mother was there, and I happened to overhear the bride complaining to my wife that they really didn't like the fellow that they hired to perform the wedding. And they were thinking about letting him go and getting somebody else. And so I just kind of shoehorned myself into that situation. I'm ordained. I'd be more than happy to do your wedding ceremony. I'll charge you, I'm not going to say how much it was because it was a ridiculously low amount because I was starting out, and I wanted to make sure because she was going to lose her deposit with this other fella. But long story short, that was in March of 2003. Very first wedding ceremony I did. Had one of those clouds parted, come to Jesus moments. This is what you were put on earth to do. And just took off from there.
So how did that first wedding ceremony go?
You know, it was interesting. I performed the number one rookie mistake for an officiant. I'm standing up on the altar, groom standing next to me. I ask everyone to rise. Dad walks the bride in, gives her a hug and a kiss, and the groom goes up and shakes Dad's hand and takes his fiancée, his bride-to-be, takes her up to me, and I start the ceremony. And about 2 minutes later, I noticed the mother of the groom looking at me, trying to subtly wave her hand, motion her hand down, and I looked around and went, oh, everybody's still standing. Please be seated. Sorry about that.
It is, that's kind of a common, if you ever have like a friend do the ceremony, like we'll remind them like 18 times, like make sure everyone's sitting, because people, it's like at a wedding, it's like sheep. They just kind of walk and they do what they're told.
Don't get me started on friends doing ceremonies.
I do want to talk about that.
Yeah, I do too.
But so the ceremony goes well though.
Yep.
You have a come to Jesus moment. That's were you nervous? I mean, you said obviously stage acting and things like that.
You know, the funny thing, I was, and it's very perceptive of you to catch that, because the main difference. I mean, I've been on, earlier I mentioned 3,000 seat theater. I've been on stage with 3,000 seats. Maybe I exaggerate a bit, but it's not me up there. It's whoever I'm playing. So that first, I'd say probably the first 3 to 4 to 5 weddings, it was a little bit nervous because it was me. But got very quickly got into the swing of the thing. The comfort level increased, and every year I add on another 100 some odd weddings. I tell people these days, you could wake me up at 3 a.m, give me a Post-it note with a couple people's names on it, and I can stand up and improvise a 15-minute wedding ceremony.
Yeah, if you need to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're going along then, you've got a couple under your belt. When did then kind of this, Ray Van Winkle and Associates, how did that kind of grow and come about?
That came about around, let me see, probably around 2010. I was just by myself up until then. I had actually, just as a sidebar, I had actually been working a full-time day job when I started doing weddings. So the wedding thing was my side hustle. In '08, I got laid off during the Great Recession. I was in my 50s. Nobody was going to hire me. That just wasn't the way it was. And so I was able to spin that off into full time. So from '08, wedding officiant, full time. In 2010, though, I was contacted by a very good friend of mine who has always been fascinated with my business and how an officiate works and everything. And he kind of introduced me to the and associates concept, mainly because this fellow is a business attorney, and that's how law firms usually run. Right around the time he started talking to me about this, I was realizing that I was turning away a lot of business, referring over to other colleagues that you and I both know, but I was sending a lot of business out to other people, but I wasn't getting a lot of referrals back the other way. So when my friend Bill introduced me to the and associates concept, I took him on, trained him in how I do things and how I like to see things done. So whenever I was contacted by a couple who I could not help, I could refer them over to Reverend Bill. And then his schedule filled up. The next year later, I brought on my second associate. A couple of years later, I brought on my third.
So I want to get back to you being the layoff or corporate, what you did before. But yeah. So I don't want to forget to ask. So when you talk about, and I think it's important, you hired Bill, like how you wanted to see a ceremony, be performed, go off. Like if you had to verbalize that, in terms of like what is your vision for that, or what is the ideal vision? How would you describe that?
Oh boy, interesting question. First things first, what I visualize is it's not my way or the highway. We don't dictate. The wedding couple, they are our boss. It's like we're a taxi cab driver or an Uber driver. The bride and groom, they're our fare. We will take you where you want to go, the way that you want to go. I've also ensured, and kind of the vision for the company is both myself and all of my associates, we're very lighthearted. We're not terribly serious. We are gathered here today, kind of people. So we're fun. We're lighthearted. Our job is to serve.
So you said you were working full time while you were doing your officiants. What were you doing, or if you want to talk about that?
Sure. I was a sales administrator for a marine manufacturing company in the U District. I was there for 19 years. One of these, just a desk jockey. I was in the sales department. It was basically the sales manager and myself. And then we managed a whole network of dealers and distributors and international distributors, et cetera. So phone work, computer work, doing the occasional boat show, that kind of thing.
So, and you're doing weddings on the side, right?
Yep.
And so then, like you said, when you got laid off, like that had to have been really scary, right? Or
yeah. When you look at how much Cobra is for your health insurance. That was scary. And it was, again, smartest thing I ever did was be in the military. By a weird quirk of my timing, I was able to get VA healthcare. I still pay co-pays for everything. The VA does not give health care to everybody who was in the military. You have to be a wartime vet. And I was in from 79 to 84, and in 81 or 82 is when Reagan invaded Grenada. And that was a declaration of war by Congress. I was up in Alaska at the time, but it doesn't matter. We were at war. I was in the service, so I get my health care through them. And that freed me up to be able to do the wedding officiating full time and not have to worry about get another job and get insurance, et cetera, et cetera.
This is probably terrible of me. I should have asked before. Why did you get into the Coast Guard? What was that? What inspired you to do that?
You know, what inspired me to do that is I was living at the time in a little farm town in southwest Iowa, population 100. I'd moved out there from San Francisco, so it was quite the culture shock. But I had family out there, and I just wanted to try something new, different. I was there for, I think, about 9 months, and just no job prospects, nothing really going. I wanted to head back to the coast. I felt very landlocked. The only water was the Missouri River, a little muddy river that ran nearby, and I was used to being near the Pacific Ocean. So I went to Omaha, Nebraska, went to one of those multi-branch recruiting services, and considered my options. No offense to anybody who might have been in the Army, but back then at least, anybody who could sign an X on a piece of paper went into the Army. So I said, no, I can do better than that. Marine Corps, too tough. Navy, don't know why I didn't consider the Navy, but I didn't. But I was going back and forth between the Air Force and the Coast Guard, and decided on the Coast Guard, and they sent me right back to the Bay Area. The boot camp at that time was in Alameda, California, and the first ship I was on was based out of Alameda, and the second ship I was on was based here in Seattle.
So then you got sent back to San Francisco, and then how many years then were you in the Coast Guard?
I was in for 4 years and 9 months. It was a 4-year enlistment, but by the time I figured out what service school I wanted to go to, it was a 9-month-long school, and they required that I have at least 2 years doing that job once I got out of school, so I had to add an extra 9 months onto my enlistment.
So what was that experience like? I mean, did you like it?
Yeah, I did. It was, I'd recommend it for anybody, actually. What I also recommend, though, is a lot of the people I was in joined the service when they were 17 or 18. I waited until I was 21, and I think that helped a lot, having a couple years out of school and living on my own before going into the service. But in general, it was a real wake-up call. It was kind of a pick-me-up, slap me across the head, grow up, get a job, be a man, that kind of stuff.
Was your wife helping you out at all, or was this kind of your venture then?
As far as the
officiating,
it was pretty much my kind of thing. But my wife has a lot more business experience than I do. She's really savvy as far as advertising and connecting with people and whatnot. And I would often turn to her for advice that I would sometimes take and sometimes not, much to her chagrin, in regards to business matters.
Do you find that there's specific issues in terms of being an officiant company that are unique to you in terms of like other businesses or other wedding vendors? I mean, that might be a broad question, but
it is, but specifically in regards to other wedding vendors, and what I have found over the years is, unlike a videographer or a photographer or a DJ, I find that actually paying for advertising, or more importantly, paying to be in a wedding show, really doesn't get a lot of result for people in the officiant business. And I think it's not, part of it is because some people are getting married at a church, other people are having their cousin Fred do the wedding. But unlike a lot of other vendors, officiants don't charge all that terribly much. I mean, there are a couple people around who are doing like the $800 to $1,000, but for the most part, it's like anywhere from $300 to $500. And so you're putting out a lot of money to do a show. It just doesn't, for example, in your business, you book one wedding and you're making profit. For me, I need to book a couple weddings just to break even.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because in the wedding show this year, we had just kind of upped we're going to be a sponsor for videography, and we had said like, well, now we got to book at this number of weddings to break even. But yeah, like I said, I'm sure it's a lot less.
And we're not in the business to break even. You want more than that.
And then, so talk about your thoughts about hiring a professional versus doing that friends or family, and I know it's and I'm sure it's a dear topic, and the same with me in terms of people that say they don't need a videographer or whatever. Let's talk about the pros, and what do you feel like the pros are to bring in a professional versus rely on a family and friend?
Years ago, and I used to have this on an older version of my website years ago. I tried to make my website more of an educational kind of thing, and I would talk about how about why you hire a professional in general. You don't give your cousin a mechanic's book and some tools and say, hey, fix my car. You don't go to your sorority sister when you need open heart surgery. Granted, nothing that you or I are doing is open heart surgery, but I've subsequently kind of tapered off on that over the years, because I do understand and acknowledge that a lot of people feel that their ceremony is going to be more personal if it's somebody they know standing up there. And sometimes it is. Sometimes the non-professional officiant will do a good job. A lot of times, and I know you've seen this yourself, and wedding planners and photographers will tell you that a lot of time they don't, to the point to where they don't remember to hold the microphone up in front of their face. They don't move off to the side when the bride and groom are kissing, and so they're photobombing the picture. They forget how to fill out the paperwork properly, and then you're not legally married until that gets all rectified. The microphone craps out, and the person just can't speak in front of lots of people like that. But again, I've kind of mellowed on that, because I have met couples who have said, well, it did feel like more personal, and our guy did a really good job. God bless you. That's great. I, however, also feel that part of the reason we have ceremony in anything, funerals, weddings, baptisms, anything, we have ceremony to make something different and more outstanding from the rest of our lives, and that's why we celebrate the ceremony. And as you discussed earlier, you were talking that the weddings that we've done together, even when I don't actually know the people very, very well, they're not like dear friends forever, the ceremony can still have that personal, heartfelt, wow, that guy really knows this couple feeling, without actually having known this couple for all those years. That's part of being a professional. And to get back, though, onto the ceremony and why it's special, is that a lot of times, and I would ask anybody who's been to a ceremony, a wedding ceremony, where they know the officiant, that's my cousin Joe doing that. It doesn't bring the ceremony up to the level, to my mind, that it should, by having somebody that, here's somebody up there we don't know them, but they speak with respect and dignity and fun and humor and more of a sense of gravitas, I think is the word.
And I mean, and to be fair, I mean, you're speaking to me too. I mean, we had my wife's brother-in-law, perform our ceremony, for the same reason, right?
Read. I'm leaving now. Okay. How did that work out?
No, and it was good. I mean,
Yeah.
and we specifically, she had actually had a couple of friends that had volunteered to do it, and I had specifically said, we're not going to have, your sorority sister do the wedding.
Yeah.
He's a lawyer, and he, wears a suit and looks and speaks, with words.
Yep.
But no, I mean,
Speaks with words as opposed to American Sign Language. Okay.
But I mean, I do think that is a really great thing that, you can have it be personal, have it be heartfelt, have that connection with bringing in that professional. I mean, I think that is a really great point to make, right?
Yeah. I can't tell you how many weddings I've done where I arrive at the rehearsal and the wedding planner sees me coming in, and you just see this sense of relief and the shoulders drop and, oh, Ray, thank God it's you. Last week I did this wedding, and I tell you, I had to stand there and hold this guy's hand and having a professional fill in the blank makes everybody else's job easier. I'm going to make your job easier because you don't have to coach me in what's going on. The DJ, the photographer, the planner, everybody, with the exception of the caterers probably, because that doesn't have much effect, but it makes everybody else's job easier.
Well, and I would agree with that. And I would agree also, like you said, with doing the rehearsals and things where, like our friends got married, my wife's friends, and like I showed up at the rehearsal and, they didn't have a planner, and their officiant was, I can't even remember who it was, but like I'm sitting there like, and luckily like I was doing the video and like I have a brain, but like I was trying to figure out like, okay, where are people going to stand in the order and things. And like, that's not something that like that they had they wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
I told Dorothy, I said, they wouldn't have known. Like if I wasn't there, they'd still be standing
there. That's another aspect that goes toward a professional officiant is, I'd say probably about 75% of the weddings we do, there is no wedding planner or coordinator. So we run the rehearsal. So you're not, again, having to have some people standing there going, okay, what do we do? Oh, I don't know. How do you think we want to do it? Et cetera, et cetera. We come in at the rehearsal, and just like a day of coordinator, we take over, line everybody up, and do a proper and thorough rehearsal.
Because I think that is a great point, because I don't think that people, like, I think you think like, oh, we're going to get married and like we're going to stand up there, but like they don't think about the 1,800 things that lead to that in terms of like, well, how are we going to line up? What order? Where are we going to stand? A
lot of that I think is due to movies and TV. You watch movies, especially Hallmark, but anybody, you watch a wedding in a ceremony wedding ceremony in a movie, and it's usually like 90 seconds. They don't even show you naturally. They don't even show you the entire ceremony. And people get in the mind that, like you said, it's just kind of magic. Oh, we're just going to appear here and we're going to stand here and we're going to turn out and face the audience. It's going to look just like it does in the movies. But there's all that other stuff that contributes.
Yeah, I remember even Rebecca, our planner, was like, you're going to need to like.
Is that Rebecca Grant?
Yeah. And hold your hands in this. You don't even think about all that stuff. You just think, we're going to get married, and you don't think, like the actual like functional getting up there, the mechanics of it. I guess.
Yeah. It's like thinking that, okay, I want this beautiful painting hanging on my wall, and not. And being given some oils and brushes, and where do you go from there?
So in terms of, you've done a lot of ceremonies. We talked about that. Are there some that really resonate with you even now, years later or months later? Like I know that we did Matthew and Alex last year up at Russell's Loft. And I mean, that was like really heavy, really, vows and the ceremony. And I mean, they were, a lot of stuff. I mean, what resonates with you now or what keeps in your mind?
These days, it's funny you mentioned Matthew and Alex. These days, pretty much any same-sex marriage I do still resonates with me, mainly because all the work everybody had to go through and struggle to get where we are today. So, in addition to that, though, I think specifically of a wedding I did at Bear Creek Golf and Country Club, I think it was a number of years ago. The groom, unbeknownst to his wife, taught himself to play the guitar, wrote a song for her, and had the guitar waiting behind his line of groomsmen so the bride didn't see it, and in the middle of the ceremony drops to one knee. The best man gives him the guitar and he serenades his bride.
That's good.
Yes.
I didn't do anything like that.
Yeah, me neither.
I'll go for it.
No, I was going to say, there are ceremonies that are memorable for those kind of reasons. There are ceremonies that are memorable for when something goes wrong or unexpected. I co-officiated a wedding once with a Catholic deacon. We were at a Masonic hall in Burien, and Deacon Teddy walks his daughter down the aisle. I stop them. I usually don't do this, but they wanted me to ask the question if anyone sees any reason why this man and woman should not be married, et cetera, et cetera. And I asked the question, and this fellow stands up and raises his hand, and he says, "I object." Big gasp. Everybody's, oh my God, what's going on? Number 2 guy. Number 3. Number 4. By the time guy number 5 is standing up to object, the poor groom, he is doing one of those face plants, just standing there on the altar, shaking his head. Deacon Teddy turns around, points to each one of those 5 guys and says, "You guys just sit down and shut up and thank God your sister's getting married."
Wow.
Everybody breaks into laughter. It was insane. The groom, I guess, knew he was getting married into a family of practical jokers. The saving grace to the story was that she told me right before the wedding they were going to do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I was hoping.
I would have been standing there going, why, no.
Can I ask you? I would say maybe 2 out of 20, 25, they ask that anymore? Is that just kind of passé, that asking if people object?
Oh, yeah. No, that only comes up once or twice a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people avoid that. First off, the people who do want it, they want it just because it is, quote, traditional, unquote. It's what you've seen in the movies and in church, etc. Most people stay away from that. Not so much because they seriously think anybody's going to object, because who's going to invite that person, but invariably the groom will be thinking of some groomsman he's got up there who's going to want to be a smartass and say something just to be funny. And that's why we stay away from that.
Yeah, because the only times I've seen it is it's always played for jokes. Like they'll be like, "And if you have anything to say, like get out of here because you're not welcome." But it's played for laughs.
And I've done that also on the few times I've done that question. I've had people who want me to speak. If anybody objects, sit down and shut up. They're getting married anyway.
Yeah. But that would be the bride or groom would ask you, right?
Yes. I do not. I do not go off. Well, how can I put it? I normally don't go off script. I'm not going to improvise, say anything they don't want me to say, unless something goes wrong. If the bride is having a hard time getting that ring shoved on his finger, I'm going to say something. I can't help it.
But you're trying to ease kind of.
Exactly. No, and people welcome that and enjoy that. And if something like that happens early in the ceremony, it's really great because you see the tension. If the bride or groom are tense or nervous, you see that once everybody laughs and that tension just kind of melts away and the shoulders drop down a little bit and they're good to go.
Yeah, we got married at Salty's, and as we were doing the rings, this boat, like a single engine fishing boat.
Oh yeah.
It was like, I think one guy had his shirt off and the other guy had a bright orange vest, life vest on.
Yep.
Big beer guts, drinking beer, and like 10 feet off from the Salty's dock, going by. So I had the wherewithal because I was like, well, I think we should wait here for a minute. But, we didn't have we had a friend that was like, should we keep going? And I said, well, no, we should stop and wait.
That kind of thing happens on the Scansonia a lot. On Lake Union, you're in the middle of the ceremony and somebody's going by in a kayak. And occasionally, it's usually applause and whooping it up. Every once in a while, you get somebody going, "Don't do it! Don't do it! Run! It's not too late."
I was happy the last wedding we did with the cruise ship. There was some people. They got married. Stephanie and Jason got married, or Stephanie and Jason got married at the Bell Harbor, and there was a cruise ship that was decked there.
That big Norwegian cruise line ship.
It hadn't. It was. I guess it was supposed to depart like an hour before, and it wasn't. And I really was worried because we were getting set up, and there were some people that were yelling from the ship. And Scott, the DJ, we were talking, and maybe you were, we were all kind of getting ready, and I thought, man, I'm really going to be. And luckily, they didn't. When the actual ceremony was there, because that is tough. I mean, you don't want somebody, I don't know, trying to make a joke or be the star.
Yeah.
Is there common mistakes that you see couples make in terms of approaching the wedding with the officiant, or things that you wish more people would know, like easy stuff that you're like this that you see time and time again?
Oh, interesting.
Besides like relying on, Uncle Bob to do this.
Yeah. Let's take that off the table right now. Boy, believe it or not, and I talk to people about this when we have our initial consultation, the big thing is remember to get your darn marriage license. I can't tell you how many times I'll arrive at the ceremony and ask for the marriage license, and they look at me and go, "Weren't you supposed to get that?" And I did a wedding recently for actually somebody who is a professional in the wedding business who will remain unnamed. I'll tell you when we're done. And he did not have a marriage license.
Well, and for people that don't know, I mean, it is an official thing. You have to go in with your licenses and stuff. I mean, you can't just pick one up. I mean, it's not that you wouldn't want to do it. It's that you physically can't get their marriage certificate.
No, the bride and groom, or bride and bride, or groom and groom, as the case may be, you've got to go to the county anytime within 60 days of the wedding date, but not within 3 days because there's a little waiting period. They post-date your documents. No Las Vegas weddings here. You don't want to meet on a Wednesday night and get married Thursday morning kind of thing. But yeah, that is the most important aspect. Without that, there's no marriage. And like I said before when we were talking about the non-professional officiant, if paperwork's not done properly, there's no marriage. So that's the big thing. That's the big thing.
We did have a wedding that Joe, my associate, shot, and it was a quote-unquote professional officiant who will remain nameless, but Joe rolled for about 20 minutes of footage in the back with him trying to explain to them how he forgot the certificate, but that it was okay, that like they were still married, and I'll just meet up with you guys tomorrow at Starbucks. And I'm like, no, but that's not like it's like, he was trying to explain to them, oh, you're still married. And it's like, well, not until tomorrow then at Starbucks, you know?
Right. Well, though, I mean, first off, in these circumstances, we go ahead and do the ceremony.
Yes.
Naturally. And we do get together afterwards. Sometimes what happens is they've left the paperwork at the hotel, and the hotel's like an hour away. Sometimes they just haven't applied for it. If it's a case of the paperwork's been left in the hotel, again, that paperwork's good for 60 days, depending on how far back you got it. In addition, the officiant has 30 days after the date that it's signed to get those documents back to the county. So there is some slop time there. If it is a case that you just forgot to get the paperwork, then yes, indeed, you are not actually officially married until that date that document is signed. There is a Keepsake Certificate, though, as you'll recall, which is not a legal document, so you can put whatever you want on it. If you want to put that original date that you had the ceremony, you're perfectly welcome to do that.
Moving forward here, what do you have any long-term goals or what does the future kind of hold for?
Well, long-term goal number one is actually to increase the business, mainly because for me at least, and I think for some of my other fellow wedding vendors, this past couple of years have been kind of slow. There's been a lot more DIY, do it yourself, both in officiants, video, DJs, etc. Don't know if it's for economic reasons, political reasons. We're all worried that we're all going to be nuked and that you don't want to spend all that money anymore. So short-term goal, get business back up the way it was a couple of years ago. Longer term, I'm actually have been branching out lately and doing some funerals. I was actually back in 2009, I think it was, I was trained in writing and performing funeral services. That is one of the things that is kind of DIY proof. Most people don't want to deal with speaking at a funeral. Beyond that, it's simply a matter of just keeping on.
Keep on the hustle.
That's it.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming in today. It's been a really fun and insightful. I feel like I've learned a lot about you just in terms of personally, because, you see these vendors, I see you at weddings, but it's not like we have hours to, catch up.
You had said when I got here today, this is the first time you've seen me out of a suit and tie.
Yes.
I am wearing clothing, everybody. I'm not naked. I'm just not in a suit and tie.
And so thank you so much. If people want to learn more about, you, your associates, what you guys do, your philosophy in regards to weddings, what would you have them do and check out?
Yep. They're going to want to go to Seattle's bestofficiants.com. You can also find us on Facebook if you search for Reverend Ray Van Winkle and Associates.
And it is a good, easy name to remember. I always remember that. Ray Van Winkle.
Yes. When I was a little kid growing up, I wanted to be a Smith or a Jones or a Williams. Like everybody else, as soon as I got into a business where name recognition was a plus, every day it's thank God I'm a Van Winkle.
Oh, good. That's awesome. This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Check back next week for another wedding vendor interview. Thanks so much.